Okay, welcome back again. Last lesson we set up two PCs to connect to the router interface. We introduced the command. That command was show IP route in terms of viewing the routing table, and we could also do that on our command prompt. If we also load our command prompt on our PC, I was supposed to bring up a command prompt. I could use the command root print to look at my own routing table on my own PC, and we could examine our routes. Right, we could see that in my root print table, you see that I have routes that are connected to the default interface in this network that I'm connected to. IP interfaces. We are seeing other routes in terms of the default gateway. We also could examine the different metric values, and we'll talk more about metric values later down in the class, and so on. Now, let's complicate things a little bit. Let's add another router. So I'll go to my router devices, and I'm going to choose a generic router. Right? And then this router will be router 1. And I'm going to actually use a cable, a serial connection, a cable. I'm going to use the DCE cable. When you set in routers to routers in terms of a point-to-point interface, we use one side have to be DCE, and the other side have to be DTE. I'm going to talk about this in more detail as we go along in the course. So DCE, I'm going to select this cable, and I'm going to keep router 0 as DCE, which will have the clock rate, and I'm going to connect it to serial 2/0. And then I'm going to connect it to serial 2/0 on router 1. Now I'm going to configure these interfaces, the serial interfaces, and I'm going to use a different IP address all entirely. And because router 0 is the clock rate, if I want, I could just hover over it and you'll see that the clock is showing there. I'll double click on router 0, and I'm going to use my GUI tool. And again, as I say, I'm using the GUI tool because we are very new into this this course. Next course, not next course, but next lesson, we're going to be learning how to use the Cisco ISO commands. But for now, we're going to focus on just basic routing principles here. I'll go to serial, and I am going to go to IP address, and I'm going to use the 10 network. So I'm going to go 10.0.0.1 with a default classful subnet mask 255.0.0 because I'm using the 10 network, which is class A. I'm going to set my clock rate at 56,000. Alright, as you can see here, clock rate, you can see the commands being set at the bottom here. And I'm going to put up my port status as no shutdown. As you can see here, it marks no shutdown. Alright. In order for these two connections to function, I'll have to also configure the interface on router 1. So select router 1 using the GUI tool again, and I'm going to go to serials 2/0 because that is the cable that is connect. This router doesn't have a clock rate, so I'm going to make sure that is not set in terms of it's off, because only one side alone, which is the DTE side of it, that doesn't have the clock rate. I'm going to set an IP address of 10.0.0.2 on that interface with the default subnet mask, and I'm also going to put up the port status as on, as no shutdown. Alright, so the interface is in no shutdown mode, and as we can see, there's a direct connection right from router 0 to router 1. Now let's examine router 0 routing table. So you double click on router 0, and we will go to the iOS commands. I'm going to press Ctrl+C to get to my prompt, and again I'm going to show the command show IP route, and we're going to examine the contents of the routing table. As we could see before, we see there's a directly connected network, the 10.0.0.0/8, that is directly connected via serial 2 in its routing table. Right, together there's what we saw before, the 1 network and the 5 network is also directly connected as well. right? A new entry in router 0. And now I examine router 1 routing table. Again, we'll go to the Cisco ISO commands, press Ctrl C, press enter, and then I'm going to show the IP route to examine the contents of the routing table. And as we could see, in the router 1, there's only one directly connected routes. Now, what if we try to ping from PC0 to router 1? What if we could do that? Right? That interface. And let's try and see if that is possible, if that could take place. So I'll go to my PC0. I'll go to my command prompt. And I'm going to try to ping the 10 network, 10.0.0.1. See if there's any successful. We successfully ping 10.0.1. What if we try to ping 10.0.0.2 from PC0? So we have a connected route that is, and as you can see that it has been timed out, is not successful. So we have a route that is directly connected in this routing table, as we showed before, to the 10.0 network .1, but it did not successfully ping to the 10.0.2 in router 1 here. We're going to complicate things a little bit and see what is the reason why it is that we didn't successfully ping. And one of the reasons why that we didn't successfully ping from PC0 to router 1 is because each router also would need to have its own default gateway to go out of the network. And this is what we're going to talk about in our next lesson.